Hey friends and book lovers, welcome back to my channel. Today I am talking about all the books that I read in January. So I'm not going to go by star rating. I think I'm going to go from the book that I read first to the book that I read most recently in January, because that's how it works in my head, and hopefully I'll have a more organized wrap-up video in February so that I can go through all the star ratings and all the types and genres that I've read. I really do want to incorporate more stats into my wrap-ups because I think that is really interesting to watch in other videos, and I think that would be a good addition to mine. So stay tuned and look out for that in the next wrap-up for February. So in this one, the first book that I want to mention is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the novella that's going to bridge A Court of Mist and Fury with A Court of Silver Flames that comes out later on in February. And it was a novella. I mean, it's very low rated. Everyone, it's not as exciting as the other novels in this series, and it's definitely a fluff read. But I knew that going into this book. I knew that this book was going to be a fluff read and that it wasn't going to be anything exciting or substantial. And for me, I just kind of missed the characters and I wanted to be back in that world. So I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I did think it was doing what it set out to do, which is just to show us a calmer time in the lives of the characters and kind of set up the tension for the next book in the series that is coming out really soon that I'm so excited about. I gave this one a 3 stars. I feel like that's a pretty high rating for this book because everyone gave it like a 1 or 2 stars, but I just feel like I know it's a fluff novel. It was enjoyable. It wasn't a masterpiece. Hopefully Sarah J. Maas doesn't put out novellas like this all the time because they're not very good. I prefer her longer novels, but it was okay and it did what I had to do for the time when I read it, and so it was alright. The next book I read was Lore by Alexandra Bracken. This is my first book from her, and it is a standalone novel that combines like Hunger Games and Greek mythology. I read it and I did a full review of it on my channel. It was actually my first review, so I will link it up here for you guys to check out if you're interested in reading that book. That one is also a new release for 2021, and since I am Greek and of Greek heritage and grew up learning a lot about Greek mythology, I wanted to read it, review it, and put it up for you guys, so please go ahead, check that out. But I will say I gave it a 3 stars. It's a very enjoyable read. It's a very YA read, but if you're interested in kind of like a fluffier YA fast-paced novel, I would definitely say go check it out if you're interested in the premise. The next one I read was These Violin Delights by Chloe Gong. This is her debut novel, and let me tell you, this author is such a badass. She's still doing her bachelor's and she's coming out with a trilogy. That is amazing. I love it. Her next book I think comes out next year, and I will read it. I didn't love These Violent Delights as much as I thought I would. I really thought I was going to enjoy this novel much more. Perhaps it's because I don't love the whole Romeo and Juliet story. It's never been a Shakespearean play that I loved. I kind of have problems with the setup and like the premise and the ending, but I was hoping that this version of it would be much more up my alley, and it just wasn't as much. I think I gave this one a 3.5 stars, so it was still enjoyable, but there were times where I felt like it was a little hard to get through. The language was very flowery, and I don't always love that language all the time in a book. I do appreciate having the flowery language when it is warranted, but sometimes it just wasn't warranted. There is a very slow burn romance in this novel, but I just wasn't as bought into it as I thought I would be. I love a good slow burn, but this one didn't seem as realistic as I wanted it to be, and the characters didn't really seem as into each other and as passionate as I was hoping that they would be, and it kind of fell flat in certain parts. The overall like monster in this novel, without giving away any spoilers, was interesting and kind of gross. That's just me though. I think it fits in, I guess, and makes it kind of like a realistic-ish fantasy for the age in Shanghai where it was done, but it is quite disturbing if you're like me, and so that was also kind of something that was hard to get through. It is enjoyable though, so I feel like if you think the premise is up your alley and you like the flowery language and the really slow burn romance, you might really enjoy this. I think this is one of those books that's gotten mixed reviews, and unfortunately I just don't love it, but I will read the second one just because I'm curious about where she's gonna go with it. Sometimes the later books in the trilogies interest me more just as a preference because I'm already kind of versed in the world, so it's easier for me to get into than it was for this one. I do also think that Chloe Gong is going to be a phenomenal author. This debut novel definitely warrants some praise though, because it did get a lot of hype and it was really well done in certain senses too, more so than other more experienced authors. So I am interested to see what else Chloe Gong comes up with and to see if she's gonna give us other worlds and other monsters to dive into. If you read this book, let me know how you found it. We read this for the Moods and Pages book club, and that also got some mixed reviews. There were some folks that really loved it and some folks that just couldn't get through it. I was kind of more middle of the road, as you know. So if you loved it or hated it, let me know. I'm very curious to see who thought what and what everyone's reactions to this book were. The next book is another quick one. I wanted to read a nonfiction a month-ish, or at least like 10 or so nonfictions this year, because I do have a bunch on my shelf that I want to get through, and the first one that I started was a short one, but a okay one, and that is The Dip by Seth Godin. Seth Godin has written a lot of kind of helpful creator and creative type novels to get you through certain creative times that you might have, and I guess The Dip is one of them. And this is a little book that teaches you when to quit and when to stick. That is a problem that I've had like in my professional life and in my personal life, and I wanted to see if this could help me. And I feel like there are some really good points, although it is a little bit long, even though it looks so short, with some of the points that it makes, and it does get a little repetitive at times. It is a really quick read though, like 75 pages, and it is a really small like novel, so it's not anything that would take you forever to read, but it is repetitive, so just know that it does get into it a little bit. I think if you kind of have that same problem as I do when you're not really sure when you're supposed to quit or where you're supposed to persevere, this can definitely be something that is good to keep in your back pocket. And it's a book that I definitely want to revisit when I'm having those types of feelings and having those types of struggles in my life, so I thought it was still a worthwhile read. I don't really rate nonfiction books all that often, so I didn't give this one a rating, but just know the certain qualms that I had with it so that you can go into it with that knowledge. The next one was one that I buddy read on Megan's Reading Revelations Discord with a bunch of folks, and that is Malice by John Gwynne. This is my first John Gwynne novel, and let me tell you, if you haven't already heard me say it, his writing is like butter. It is so smooth. I found it really easy to read, and it wasn't too simplistic. It was still descriptive, but it was just such a nice way of putting words together. It was so smooth, and I haven't experienced such smooth writing in such a long time, and so I really enjoyed this novel. It does have some pacing issues only because it is the first in the quartet, and you do get a lot of world building and a lot of foundation that has to be laid in order to get to the next 3 books. So just go in knowing that, because I know a lot of folks have DNF'd it because it does get a little slow, but the last like 100 or 200 pages of this are really action-packed, and I think set up the next book in the series, Valor, really well. So I'm hoping to read Valor in the next couple months because I really enjoyed this book, and I think I gave it like a 3.5 or 4 stars just because of the pacing issues. And it is very much like a black and white, good guy, bad guy type of novel. So just go into it knowing that there is that sort of prophecy trope in this novel, and that it is based around kind of a very famous prophecy of the good guy and the bad guy trope. However, I do think John Gwynne does that really well, and the writing for this is really beautiful. We did a live show for this with Megan's Reading Revelations and Chase's Book Thoughts, and I'll link both their channels below, as well as the live show that we did. You guys can watch it. It's on Megan's channel if you guys are interested to hear what our thoughts were, what our favorite characters were, who we hated, who we think is a villain, who we think is a good guy. But I am much more excited to get to Valor because I think it's so well set up now that it's not going to have pacing issues, and the plot is just going to go by so wonderfully. And the last book that I read in January, I know a few of you will be very excited to hear about. It's Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. Look at how beautiful this book is. I still can't get over like how beautiful and colorful it is. I can definitely understand why someone would want a tattoo of this. It is gorgeous. This is a standalone novel in the Cosmere world by Brandon Sanderson. It is hilarious, so well done. I think I gave it like a 5 stars. I loved it. His writing is very different than other authors. It's very simplistic and to the point, and I'm wondering if that same style is what we're going to see in the rest of the Stormlight archives. I'm reading The Way of Kings in February, so I'm interested to see how he's going to be writing and if that's going to be the same consistent type of writing. I do enjoy it. It is easy to follow, and it is easy to read and understand what's going on, and I'm just curious to see what's going to happen with that. But this novel was great. I loved Light Song. He's probably my favorite character in this. He's hilarious. His dad jokes are amazing, and definitely someone that I would totally meet in real life and go out for a drink with because he's awesome. I enjoyed the story of the two sisters. That was really interesting. I loved seeing their development over time, and I would love to read more about these characters if I ever get the chance to, or if any of the other Cosmere novels touch on them. That will be awesome. I don't know too much just because I don't want to spoil myself. This is the first Brandon Sanderson book that I have read, but I did think it was really well done, and I was constantly compelled to read it. Like, I kept on picking up this book even though I had other books to read before it all the time. I was always like, I'm gonna read Warbreaker today. Yeah, I want to read some more Warbreaker. It wasn't as addictive as other novels, but it was one that I was really compelled to read. The story just pulls you in, and you're just really curious about what's going to happen and how things are going to form, and I really enjoyed the discovery of the story and the world and the characters in this novel. So if you haven't read Brandon Sanderson, I definitely recommend reading this one. It's a standalone, and I've heard that it's a good one to start with if you're interested in starting with his works. So that is it for my January wrap up. If you guys have read any of these novels, if you guys have loved any of these novels, let me know down below. If you guys think I should read any other novels based on my enjoyment of any of the ones that I mentioned today, let me know again. I'm always looking to add more books to my never-ending and huge TBR, so feel free to do so. If you like this video, please click the like button, and if you enjoy my content, please feel free to subscribe because I am sure there are going to be more videos that you will not want to miss. Thank you.